Alyssa Monroe was young, beautiful, and living the life most only dream of, while Gregory Lang, wealthy and twice her age, believed he could buy her love. But when her independence threatened his control, obsession turned deadly in a crime so calculated it shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The trial of Gregory Lang began in early 2023, drawing nationwide attention. The story of a wealthy older man's descent into obsession, control, and eventually murder captivated the public. In the courtroom, Gregory sat emotionless, dressed in a tailored suit, his hands clasped neatly in front of him. But the composed appearance could not hide the mounting evidence against him. Prosecutors laid out a chilling narrative that revealed just how calculated his actions had been. They presented the timeline of Alyssa Monroe's disappearance, the surveillance footage manipulation, and the freshly poured concrete hiding her body. They showed the jury receipts for tools and materials purchased days before Alyssa went missing. Cement mix, heavy-duty plastic wrap, industrial gloves. They introduced text messages that showed his increasing frustration and jealousy. And perhaps most damning of all, they revealed the digital spyware found on Alyssa's phone, proving Gregory had been tracking her for months. The housekeeper testified about the strange behavior and the urgent cleaning orders. Forensic experts explained the cause of death and how the crime scene had been cleaned in a clear effort to cover up the murder. Everything pointed to premeditation. Gregory had not acted in a moment of rage. He had planned this. He had watched Alyssa pull away from him, grow more independent, and rather than let her go, he decided to silence her forever. The defense tried to cast doubt on the timeline and questioned the reliability of the housekeeper. They argued that Gregory had panicked after finding Alyssa dead during a surprise visit and tried to cover it up out of fear. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury saw through the narrative. The surveillance footage had not just been edited, it had been designed to deceive investigators. The materials he had purchased were not items someone buys in a panic. And the spyware on her phone, which allowed him to track her every move, painted the full picture of a man consumed by obsession. After 2 weeks of testimony and 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict, guilty of first-degree murder. Gregory Lang was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For many, justice had been served. But the impact of the case lingered far beyond the courtroom. Alyssa Monroe's story became a symbol of the dangers that can lurk behind wealth and power. Her social media, once a curated collection of beauty and glamour, transformed into a memorial. Followers who once admired her lifestyle now mourned the reality she had hidden, an invisible cage built on manipulation and fear. Documentaries, podcasts, and talk shows analyzed every detail of the case, sparking discussions about control in transactional relationships, the power imbalance in sugar arrangements, and the darker side of influencer culture. Her family created a foundation in her name focused on educating young women about online safety and emotional abuse. While they could never bring Alyssa back, they hoped to help others recognize the warning signs she missed. In the end, her life became more than just a cautionary tale. It became a call for awareness, protection, and change. 2 months after Alyssa Monroe's disappearance, the case seemed to be at a standstill. Without a body, no signs of violence, and no physical evidence tying anyone to a crime, investigators had little to work with. The media had moved on to other stories, and tips had dried up. Yet the lead detective remained convinced that Alyssa had not left willingly. Every detail of her last day, her plans, her possessions left behind, and her known fear of being followed, pointed to foul play. Still, nothing could be proven. Then a call came in from someone unexpected, Gregory Lang's former housekeeper. She had worked for him for nearly 5 years, but had been abruptly let go shortly after Alyssa went missing. She had stayed silent, out of fear, but finally decided to speak. What she told detectives immediately reignited the investigation. She claimed Gregory had been unusually tense and secretive in the days following June 18th. He had asked her to deep clean the garage, an area she rarely entered, and dispose of several large trash bags that he insisted she not open. He also canceled all other housekeeping services that week and told her to take the rest of the month off. Intrigued and suspicious, detectives obtained a new warrant and returned to Gregory's estate. This time, they brought a full forensic team. The house appeared spotless, almost unnaturally so. But in the garage, they noticed something odd. A fresh layer of concrete had been poured in one corner, even though no renovations had been reported. It was smooth, clean, and slightly discolored from the surrounding floor. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Within minutes, they began signaling in the exact area of the new concrete. The entire slab was broken up and removed. Beneath it, wrapped in plastic and luxury linens, were human remains. Dental records confirmed what detectives had feared. Alyssa Monroe had been buried there. The discovery changed everything. Now it was no longer a missing person case. It was a murder investigation. The condition of the remains revealed blunt force trauma to the back of the skull. Forensic analysts determined the estimated time of death matched the night Alyssa had vanished. The linens she was wrapped in came from a set found in Gregory's guest bedroom, and traces of her DNA were found inside the garage's drainage system, suggesting an attempt to clean up after the fact. Investigators reviewed the security footage Gregory had originally provided. With new digital tools, experts detected signs of manipulation. Sections of the footage were looped, and timestamps had been altered. Gregory had created a false timeline to give himself an alibi, and for weeks it had worked. But now, with the body recovered and evidence mounting, his carefully constructed lie was falling apart. Police arrested Gregory Lang at his estate without incident. He offered no resistance, but his silence was telling. The man who had once controlled every detail of Alyssa's life had finally lost control. His obsession, once hidden behind wealth and charm, had now been exposed as the driving force behind a calculated, cold-blooded murder. On the night of June 18, 2022, Alyssa Monroe vanished without a trace. She had been scheduled to attend a high-profile product launch party in downtown Miami, hosted by one of the skincare brands she had recently partnered with. Her followers were expecting behind-the-scenes posts and red carpet photos, but instead, her account went completely silent. At first, people assumed she was running late or having technical issues. By morning, her friends and team realized something was wrong. Attempts to contact Alyssa failed. Her phone went straight to voicemail and text messages remained unread. Her closest friend, who lived nearby, went to check on her and found Alyssa's condo locked from the inside. There was no sign of forced entry. Her phone was sitting on the kitchen counter, fully charged. Her purse, keys, and wallet were untouched, on the dining table. It looked like she had planned to step out for just a moment, but never returned. Miami police were called to the scene. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken furniture, no blood, no damage to the lock. It was as if she had simply disappeared into thin air. Surveillance footage from the condo's lobby showed her entering the building earlier that afternoon, carrying groceries and chatting with the doorman. But strangely, there was no footage of her ever leaving. It was a dead end. As investigators began piecing together her last known movements, they focused on recent tensions in her life. The anonymous threats, the controlling ex-sponsor, and the new relationship with Marcus all came under scrutiny. Marcus cooperated fully, providing text messages and details of their last conversations. He told police that Alyssa had been increasingly fearful in recent weeks, convinced she was being watched. Naturally, attention turned to Gregory Lang. When questioned, he claimed he hadn't seen or spoken to Alyssa in over 2 weeks. He appeared calm and concerned, offering to assist in any way. He even allowed police to review security footage from his estate, which appeared to show him home all night watching television. He provided phone logs, receipts, and even food delivery timestamps to support his alibi. Everything seemed airtight. Still, detectives were uneasy. Gregory's composure felt rehearsed. He had answers for every question, but no emotion behind them. And though nothing directly connected him to Alyssa's disappearance, the obsessive behavior in the months prior couldn't be ignored. Police requested access to Alyssa's digital records and began a forensic review of her devices. There, they found signs of spyware, tracking software installed remotely, likely by someone with access to her phone. But there was still no concrete proof. Without a body, a weapon, or a confession, investigators were stuck. The case grew cold quickly, with no new leads and no public tips. The media attention faded, and Alyssa became just another missing person in a city full of unanswered questions. Her social media pages were frozen in time, photos of smiling beach days and luxury getaways now serving as eerie reminders of a young woman who vanished without warning. Behind closed doors, though, the investigation quietly continued. Detectives were convinced this wasn't a disappearance. It was something much darker. They just needed the right break to prove it. By early 2022, the relationship between Alyssa and Gregory had shifted into something far more unsettling. What had once been an arrangement based on mutual benefit had evolved into a one-sided obsession. Gregory no longer treated Alyssa like a young woman with her own goals and dreams. He viewed her as a possession, something he had paid for and therefore controlled. The lavish gifts didn't stop, but they began to feel more like leverage than generosity. Alyssa had started gaining traction on social media. Her follower count had doubled in just a few months, and she was beginning to attract real brand deals, fitness supplements, fashion lines, and travel partnerships. She saw a future where she could earn her own money, no longer needing Gregory's financial safety net. That idea thrilled her, but it terrified him. Gregory noticed the change. He saw her confidence growing and her dependence on him fading. What scared him most was that he was becoming irrelevant in her life. He tried to pull her back in by increasing the money, planning spontaneous trips, and offering business investments in her name. But Alyssa politely declined, explaining that she wanted to focus on her brand and build something herself. To Gregory, that was rejection, an insult to everything he believed he had done for her. As she tried to pull away, Gregory became more controlling. He demanded to know the passwords to her social media accounts, claiming he could help protect her image. He installed a smart home system in her condo, one that he claimed was for her safety, but it also gave him remote access to her home's cameras. Alyssa didn't think twice at first. It all seemed excessive, but not dangerous. Then the surveillance started. At first, it was subtle. Gregory would mention things she hadn't told him, like where she'd gone for lunch or who she had been sitting next to at an event. She assumed he'd seen it online or heard it through mutual acquaintances, but it quickly escalated. He began referencing private conversations, describing outfits she'd only worn indoors, and even calling her at the exact moment she arrived somewhere. That's when Alyssa realized something was very wrong. She tried distancing herself further, going days without answering his calls or texts. When she finally confronted him about the invasions of privacy, Gregory dismissed her concerns and accused her of being ungrateful. He reminded her of everything he had done, paid her rent, bought her a car, given her the life she always dreamed of. To him, that meant she owed him loyalty, obedience, and presence. Around this time, Alyssa started dating a man closer to her age, Marcus, a personal trainer she met at her gym. They kept their relationship quiet, but somehow Gregory found out. Soon, Marcus began receiving anonymous messages, warning him to stay away from Alyssa. At first, Alyssa thought it was just an angry ex acting out, but when threatening letters arrived at her condo and Marcus's gym, it became clear this wasn't going away. Though Alyssa filed a police report, there was no proof Gregory was behind it. The threats were anonymous. No cameras had caught anything. And Gregory, when questioned, calmly denied everything, acting shocked and concerned. But behind his cold professional mask, Gregory Lang was planning something far more sinister. His obsession wasn't just dangerous. It was about to turn deadly. In 2021, Alyssa Monroe was 23 years old and living in Miami. Her Instagram page portrayed the perfect life: beaches, designer clothes, expensive dinners, and exotic vacations. Her followers believed she was a successful influencer who had made it big in the fashion world. But behind the glamorous photos was a reality few knew about. Alyssa's lifestyle wasn't funded by brand deals or modeling gigs. It was supported by a man named Gregory Lang. Gregory was a 52-year-old investment banker with a net worth in the millions. Divorced, with 2 adult children he rarely saw, Gregory had grown bored with the corporate world and lonelier with each passing year. He wasn't looking for love in the traditional sense. Instead, he turned to a popular sugar dating website where younger women and wealthy older men struck discreet arrangements. That's where he found Alyssa. She had recently moved to Miami from a small town in Georgia, looking for opportunity, exposure, and money to pay off college debt. When Gregory messaged her, she was intrigued by his polished profile and financial promises. Their arrangement started simply. Gregory gave her a monthly allowance, paid for her apartment in Brickell, and gifted her designer bags and jewelry. In return, Alyssa agreed to spend time with him, mostly dinners, weekends at luxury resorts, and the occasional public event where she acted as his arm candy. At first it worked well. Gregory was respectful, generous, and made no unreasonable demands. Alyssa, used to struggling financially, saw the relationship as temporary, a stepping stone to a more independent future. But Gregory didn't see it that way. He became increasingly involved in Alyssa's life. He wanted to know who she was, with what she was doing and where she was at all times. He offered to manage her finances, pressured her to delete certain male followers, and discouraged her from going to parties. Alyssa chalked it up to old-fashioned jealousy and tried to keep him happy without giving up her independence. Still, cracks began to show. Gregory would get angry if she didn't respond to texts within minutes. He would show up at her apartment unannounced, claiming he was worried about her safety. When Alyssa posted a photo from a yacht party that he wasn't invited to, he sent her a long message accusing her of disrespect. Alyssa brushed it off, telling friends that rich older men were just more controlling by nature. She didn't realize she was being groomed into dependence. Over time, the financial support became a chain. If Alyssa did something Gregory didn't like, her allowance would be delayed. If she traveled without telling him, he'd threaten to take back the car he'd leased for her. The once exciting arrangement began to feel more like a trap. And while Alyssa dreamed of escaping the deal and standing on her own, Gregory had a very different plan. In his mind, she wasn't just a young woman he sponsored. She was someone he owned. And he had no intention of letting her go.